Hey guys, it's Ben the Coin Geek at Old Pueblo Coin in Tucson, Arizona. Thanks for joining me today. As always, do the algorithm stuff for us. Like, share, subscribe. Uh, OldPuebloCoin.com, TucsonCoinshow.com. That's the introduction. And now we're going to talk about a singular topic from James saying that he's a customer and a fan of the YouTube channel from Michigan. Put that back in the databanks. I've been noticing the big retailers are offering coins, bullion, etc. in copper. Here it comes. Not cheap either. If it was junk, but it's 9999, do you think it is or will be collectible? Thanks, James. All right, great question about copper. We've had some fun with copper over the years, and copper is a fascinating thing. We've talked about in the past how if you drive through the western states, usually if you have something that looks like one, a ghost town, or two, civilization, probably mining was involved. I mean, there's some railroad stops. You know, you had a town that was as far as someone could ride in a day and it's a watering hole kind of thing. But for the most part, where there was civilization, it was from mining. That's how the West grew. And that's why you see a lot of the populations where they grew up in Arizona, Colorado, Utah, Nevada, not as quite as much in New Mexico. I think that's one of the reasons New Mexico is still somewhat sparsely populated because they never really had the minerals. Copper, Michigan, fun fact, Arizona and Michigan are like the two copper states. Arizona used to be known as the Copper State. It's people call it the Grand Canyon State instead. Boring. So, but it would be fun if it was still the Copper State. There's actually a vein of copper that runs from the Grand Canyon down into Nacosari, Mexico. So that's basically cuts all the way across Arizona at an angle. And down south of Tucson, when you come to Tucson for the show, you should go to Bisbee for a mine tour. Um, the entire the entire country was wired up with electricity, and Bisbee became a thing because of electricity. So thanks to the work of Tesla and Edison and all the guys that were working on creating electricity for the country and wiring us up, it's a part of Arizona history, and it's a fascinating part of history. They made what they get 88 billion pounds of copper out of this one little region. 8 billion. It was the they actually got like 12. How would they get? Oh, now I got to look it up. I was going to say how many millions of ounces of gold out of that same mine. Another story, another day. So the question becomes about whether or not copper will be collectible. And this is, I think, just in the long term, talking in general about the cost of things and inflation and how it all works out together. I think the reality is eventually copper continues to move up with inflation. And I think that's just kind of an expected thing. I mean, silver was $4 an ounce when I started doing this, and it's $40 an ounce now. You know, gold's gone up 10x over my working lifetime. And so it's interesting. I think you can see a lot of the same things happening with any other base metals. There's a couple things that can drive this differently, though. His question had to do with investment and collectability. When it comes to those things, it's a little bit harder to consider because you talk about something that you have to have pounds and pounds and pounds of. So traditionally, people invested in copper with what you'd call a paper contract. They wouldn't buy physical copper because, you know, you're not going to buy a ton of copper and get delivery. That's just not really a thing. That's not practical. So you would just buy a paper contract. And I'm guessing there might be copper ETFs, I don't even know, where you could just buy an electronic version of copper, right? That's that's probably a thing. So I am seeing a lot of shops carry copper rounds, copper bars. To me, they're novelty items. They're fun. They're interesting. I don't see them in the next 10 or 20 years turning into like what you see with silver, where you go to a shop and a shop will likely have a little somewhere at the counter silver rounds for sale. I don't think you'll see that the average person will be running in to buy copper. Maybe it'll happen in my lifetime, but maybe not in my working lifetime, if that makes sense. But it is the type of thing that is being done and used for the same reason why silverware went to silver plated. It's cost saving. right? So people start replacing silver items with copper items because copper is more affordable, and they know that the consumer isn't going to run in and just always have 50 bucks to spend on something. They might have 5 or 10. So being able to have something in that price point at a $5 or $10 price point is cool. And one of the things I'm looking forward to, where I think what is true, is I think you will start to see more and more interesting and artistic versions of copper bars and rounds. And I think we've already started to see that. And I think that'll have some pushback towards the collectible market, which was part of his question, is collectability. You know, in Arizona, I know, and I'm sure this is true in Michigan, there are lots of copper items that are collectible or that are older. There's plenty of little copper tokens from the 60s that are seemingly still a dime a dozen, that are tokens from the mines. So a Sarco or whoever else you may have had in the area, Phelps Dodge. There are lots of old tokens that are from Arizona in general, that are the good for tokens that are related to the copper mining industry, you know, and lots of trade tokens are actually still relatively inexpensive. Obviously, the ones that get the headlines are the trade tokens that are trade for $500 or $1,000, but then you'll see some trade token you've never seen before, and you can pick it up for 20 or 30 bucks. And I find that to be a fascinating part of the market, and something that's, if you like history, and you like to be able to stand somewhere where something was produced, so you can physically go down to a ghost town or mining town and have a token from that town that's good for a drink or maybe a pint of milk even, and look at it and be like, yeah, this is cool. This is 100 years old or 75 years old, and the business used to be here, and now there's, you know, nothing, or a Dollar General, one of the two. It's really fun, and that's collecting is about, the history and putting it all together. So I think copper is going to probably continue to climb in price over time with inflation. It's a thing. And I think that you'll start seeing it in shops as much as people get it in. We don't actively seek it, but I do think that there's something to be said for stores actively seeking to have it in stock, simply because it gives somebody a lower price point at which to purchase some items. By the way, usually not a great return on your money. I mean, even when silver was really inexpensive, you know, your buy sell was probably 10% on either side or something like that. On copper, I don't think it's that good. I mean, I know that at times I don't even know, because I don't order them in, but like copper rounds, you know, you're able to buy them for a quarter and sell them for $1, but you're only selling usually 1 or 2 at a time. So it's one of those things where less expensive items will have a bigger margin, but also a lower volume. So it usually doesn't really amount to a whole lot of actual cash flow. So that's it, copper. Some of you have seen it in the local shops. Leave your comments, remarks, thoughts. Let me know what you think about the future of copper. And it'll be a continued topic for us, for all the wrong reasons probably, but tune in. You might see some more stuff about copper down the road. All right, guys. Thanks so much for being here. I've been the Coin Geek. You can watch more videos and subscribe, clicking on several different buttons. Yeah, you know, potpourri, potluck, pick your poison. Take care.